For as long as I can remember, I've always wanted to be rich. I wanted to make a lot of money. One of my favorite cartoons was Scrooge McDuck or DuckTales. You remember that TV show where he would just jump into his swimming pool of money and just swim. And I don't know why, it was just something that I loved the most of all TV shows, cartoons, is to be rich, to have that much money. And who knows, there might be some other influences, but that's definitely how far back it goes. I was probably 10, 11. I don't even know. How old is DuckTales, right? I'm going to look this up. DuckTales release date. 1987 is DuckTales, right? And if I were to look at 1987, I was born in 1982. I was 5 years old. Are you kidding me? I was that young? That is freaking nuts. So anyways, I guess I wanted to be rich for quite some time now. And then I'm just starting off this video and I really don't know where this is going to go. It's going to be a long form podcast. Hopefully it makes publication on YouTube, and hopefully there'll be some good snippets that I'll be able to put on TikToks and maybe Instagram one day. But I'm going to riff on just sort of kind of how I made $1 million, how I became financially free or became financially successful enough. The funny part about it is, the irony of it is, once you kind of get to a certain level, you feel exactly the same. That saying, money doesn't buy happiness. It's very true. Money doesn't buy happiness. It doesn't really buy security. It actually makes you more stressed out. I guess it depends. That's why I'm finding myself moving towards Jesus and finding God. But that's a little bit of a different topic. But let's riff. And let's play with my little camera equipment, because I got a new setup here. Look at this. I can switch and talk to this camera instead. So I started with DuckTales, right? That's where I'm at. 5 years old, maybe 7, because they play reruns. Swimming in money. That's the goal. I used to draw pictures of like fast cars and piles of money when I was like first grade. Back then, also, what is a popular show is like MTV Cribs is the old one, but it was the newer one. But then before that, there was Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous. I used to watch that stuff. That was very fun to watch. And I guess, my upbringing and the TV shows back then, they influenced me to want to drive towards this. But I think the reality is everybody wants to be rich. They want to be wealthy. They want to be financially free, and very few people get there. And I think that there are good lessons that I can teach that I figure, why not share it? There is this sort of common thing or uncommon thing that people don't really like to admit, I think, and I'm going to admit it here. And that's the amount of luck required to get here. When I mean luck, where you were born, who your parents were, who came into your life. There's just a lot of different factors that are just really out of your control, and just by random happenstance, it just occurred, and then it led you to the path that you're on. Commonly said, I remember hearing about Bill Gates, he happened to be at one of the few schools that got a computer, and the people there had the foresight enough to get a computer there. And if it wasn't for that, there would be no Microsoft, or there would be no multi-billion-dollar billionaire Bill Gates. So I'm going to try to mention luck a couple times, because there's a lot of stuff in my life that has happened out of luck, right? I believe they were luck, or I believe they were God. I don't know. It changes, right? I'm going to be 42, roughly 30 days from me making this video. And I use luck to stay humble, right? Because there's just so much that has happened in my life. And when I think about because I'm going to start in a place that is unlucky, right? The unlucky place it started is my mom dying. She was shot and killed by my dad, and I saw the whole thing, and it was pretty traumatic. Not really traumatic to me now, because I was 15 at the time, and it was a very interesting and weird thing to happen. And when I tell people, it's kind of shocking, right? I had to wrestle the gun away from my dad, had to call the police, had to be in limbo for a little while because my dad was in jail and my mom was no longer alive, and I had 2 younger brothers, right? I was the oldest of 3, and that unlucky thing happened and kind of led me on a path to moving away from all my friends in a different city where I hated everybody. On top of which, I was already pretty depressed. I was actually just, during this time, I was 15, right? I was going to be a sophomore. And what happened was I grew up pretty overweight. I was pretty fat, right? I ate a lot, and I didn't really get into sports very well. I was very slow. I was always the slowest kid. I was very out of shape. I was just obese, right? I wasn't very fit. And, the funny thing is, as I was becoming older, as I grew into teenagehood and became to get taller and more I would say better looking, this thing happened that caused my life to changed dramatically, made me very depressed. You losing your parents and kind of having your world turn upside down can do weird things to you, right? And so we moved away. I got really depressed. So I was just but the reason I bring this point up is because I had just started to become in better shape or started to look good, right? Starting to grow into my teenage years, right? But then I got really depressed and moved away from all my friends. And then I got fat again. I got bigger. I got 240 pounds. And this happened, I don't know, like the thing is like, you make these things that have happened in my life are just a bunch of mistakes, right? Or maybe they're by chance, who knows? The point is that I gained a bunch of weight. I didn't get in shape, and I was just trying to get through school, right? Or get through high school. I was trying to live a life where, like, okay, I don't have any parents anymore. I have my aunt, and I have my brothers, but it is kind of a weird place to be, because before you had this person breathing down your neck, which was my mom, telling me to get good grades. It was a pretty interesting childhood because my parents separated. It was just a big place that made things very difficult. And then what ended up happening was that I moved away, and I was in this place where, like, okay, what am I going to do? I'm like 15 years old. I am, I can't drive. I'm just sad. I do eventually get in shape. I join football. I get into fitness. I get healthy. I become a personal trainer. So there's actually a little story there that's pretty cool, but it's not really related to money. So I like to talk about money. So I get in shape. I joined network marketing. I joined a multi-level marketing thing, and I ended up kind of getting a decent start. I don't think I really made any real profit, but I learned personal development. And I would say that was after high school. So I would say network marketing, MLM, put me on the path to making more money, because then now I actually saw a path on how to get rich. Although it wasn't through MLM, it was the start of it that helped. Because the thing that I got from multi-level marketing, that although I have a weird taste in my mouth about the whole thing and how weird it is, because I can relate to multi-level network marketing, is the idea of personal development. I got introduced to Jim Rohn. And for those that don't know who Jim Rohn is, he was the mentor to Tony Robbins. And they also did network marketing, and they made a ton of money doing that. I did not. But the stuff they taught was still very valuable. It led me to this path of just continuing to read books, to listen to audiobooks, to listen to eventually podcasts, and just stuff about business that made me become who I am, that made me eventually make $1 million, to help me become financially free. Because the guarantee was, if Jim Rohn would say, if you wrote in your journal, right, and you wrote what the journal was worth, you buy a $20 empty book and you fill it to make it worth more than $20, and you listen to audio tapes in the car, and you did all these things, you would eventually become rich. Well, it worked. It took like a long time, but it worked. And you just listen to these things, and I made myself listen to all this stuff, from Rich Dad Poor Dad to just all kinds of entrepreneurs, the E-Myth. Like I was on this sort of self-development treadmill, and it led me on a good path. So that's kind of the start of it that kind of led me there. And if I had to say, that is a majority of it in the beginning, it's just believing that you can actually be in a place that is uncommon for most people, right? Be in a place, because I really thought, I would even tell my boss when I was a personal trainer, like I was going to retire one day, right? I was going to retire before I was like, 30 or 40 or whatever, right? And they just look at me like I was crazy, right? I just believed that I could do it. I believed it was possible. These books and these people just brainwashed me into believing that it could be done. But what eventually did happen, though, was I became a career person at the gym. I worked at 24 Hour Fitness, and I wanted to be an executive, because there was leaders there that really motivated me, right? So the dream of becoming rich kind of took a back seat, but I still worked on personal development. It never stopped. And the thing was, I'm going to fast forward even more, because I was a trainer for like 17 years, I think it went up to highs like $90,000 to $100,000 a year almost. And then eventually went back down during the financial collapse in 2008, making $50,000 or $60,000 a year. And it wasn't until that I learned copywriting and learned about marketing that really put everything together. There's this saying, like, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. I think that's how it works, right? Because there's just so much knowledge out there. You hear maybe what Jeff Bezos says, or Elon Musk, or you hear these interviews of very successful people. But the problem is, a lot of stuff, what they say is just out of context of where you're at. Like, I might hear something, and when I was making $50K a year, it was different. Like, I didn't hear the same things as I hear when I'm making $1 million a year. It's a whole different kind of brain mindset. And why does this happen? It's because your experience is different. It's kind of like when an adult sees a young kid and they go, "You're so young," right? It's a compliment, but it's also what they're really saying is you're just naive. And, I'm going to go on tangent here a little bit, but like the naivete is actually kind of a little bit of an advantage because you're not ruined by the world. You're not worn down. And that's what happens as you get older. You just get worn down by all the things you're not worthy of or that you can't do. But when you're young, you're just so open. It is a very magical time, a mindset. You just believe in things that other people can't believe. I mean, at least you will if you're listening to the right things and you have the right people in your life that really kind of encourage you. But going back to what I said, what got me was copy. Okay, so copy is what brought me to the place. I learned copywriting. I had learned a lot of other things before that, but it wasn't until I learned copywriting, or how about I put it this way? It's kind of like once you learn the secret to weight loss is calories in, calories out, and then you just follow it and you lose weight and it's like magic. You're like, holy crap, this actually works. That's what marketing became to me when I learned copywriting. Because once you learn like the main key, the key that fits in the hole that makes the biggest difference in how things work, it's like a little switch that goes off in your head that kind of puts everything together, right? Everything just clicks. And it is not the easiest thing to sort of explain because it's like, I get it, right? And that's something you're looking for. You're looking for that sort of insight, or you eventually, I'm not sure, maybe you are looking for it, but the thing is that once you find that insight and you figure out how all it works, and then you push everything you can in that direction, it's just a matter of time until you're successful, until you hit that goal, whether it be your first 6 figures or your first 7 figures or your whatever, right? And I guess that's kind of like the whole thing here right now. Like, I mean, I know I've been all over the place with everything I've been telling you, and hopefully it makes sense. And there are like maybe a few of you still listening, but there is this little small snippet, okay? This little tiny snippet of like understanding where you understand how it all works. I remember I went through a bunch of courses. One of the courses I went through was a house flipping course, like learning how to buy and sell real estate. My thing, couldn't do it. Not my skill, not my preference. But when you really boil down what house flipping is looking for deals. That's really all it is. All you're doing is you're looking for deals. You're looking for under market deals. You're looking for people who are willing to sell their house, and then you're looking to make it easier for them by getting it below market and then selling it to somebody else. And that's actually most of what business is. It's finding good deals or finding lots of good deals. A lot of time you're trying to find a way to create value. Like I got a notebook here with a piece of paper, and you know what you can do with this? You can put words on it, and then you can turn it into a book. You put a title, and you can sell millions, hundreds of millions of copies, and then you can turn it into a movie. This is like an undervalued deal, right? This is paper and words, right? Doesn't cost anything theoretically, right? It's just words. When you put them on the page, you make a story, and then it becomes Game of Thrones, or it becomes Spider-Man or whatever, right? Or Iron Man. It becomes this blockbuster. And that's really like a lot of how it works. You find good deals or you create good deals. People like to call it creating value. So one part I want to tell you and kind of go in the direction of is kind of like why I couldn't flip houses. The reason why I couldn't flip houses or buy and sell real estate, or why I don't want to. I can do it. I mean, I'm capable. I don't want to do it. And a lot of it has to do with talking to sellers, people who own homes. And it means getting on the phone. Hate getting on the phone. Don't like negotiating, don't like these things. Eventually I do figure out how to do these things in a different arena, but I wasn't ready then, right? So the thing is there are particular skills that you have to be able to enjoy to some degree. Like for me, I really enjoy training people. I love fitness, I love health. What I didn't like is I didn't like making phone calls or scheduling appointments. I didn't like it, but it was necessary in order to build a business or to build my book as a trainer. And I could do it. I could just make phone calls, right? One thing you could do too is you go on the floor, you can meet people, you can build relationships, and then maybe sell trading. Hated that, and I never really did well that way. Basically, I didn't want to make phone calls. I just said I don't like being on the phone. But being on the phone is a lot easier and less scary than having to go out on the floor and talk to people, right? So that's kind of why I went ahead and just did the phone, right? And if I'm talking to people who had just signed up or already had personal training, it was less uncomfortable. No matter what it is, it's always uncomfortable. Like, I think that's the problem like we all run into is that everything that produces money or income is uncomfortable, right? I mean, just imagine actors and actresses that want to be on a movie. They have to memorize lines. People don't like doing that, I think. Like people don't like studying or doing this work, this boring work that's hard or scary or makes fear. Basically, boredom and fear are kind of in the same arena, right? And that's the thing. You have to find the thing that you are bored at, right? The thing that is boring to other people and hard for others, but is play for you. This is a quote. You got to find a thing that you are good at. Not good at. Good at is kind of a misnomer because it's really more about what you can do for free that you enjoy, that by nature you just get good, right? You just get really good at it. And by that many standards, what happens is you're able to build a skill and you're able to offer to value to somebody else. And to me, it happened to be email list management. It had to be data analytics. And then it happened to be, I got lucky where I have a wife who was able to build a team that was able to manage a lot of this stuff. And we just combined our skills to create a really successful business. And that's kind of like how you have to lean in a direction of where you think you can do work forever and get really good. And for some people, a lot of it is they're afraid, right? They're afraid to take that leap and get to that next stage of their life and really take risk, right? But then you can still work on your job and you can still work on your side hustle, right? And then eventually you can take the leap. Because that's what happened, even for me, like I'm very risk averse. Like even when I had something going on, I eventually started to make more money outside of my job. I ended up quitting my job as soon as I had enough money. And you can do both. But the thing was, and backtracking here a little bit, is picking something that you just double down on and you're consistent on. And I think more than anything is just having a model of understanding of like how to get there. The thing is it just isn't easy, right? Because the problem is like we doubt ourselves. We're afraid of like what we're capable of, what we're not capable of. There are just so many different little things that make things very difficult for us to like get to that next stage. We're afraid to take risks. Like, cause I always wondered too, cause I'm like, I would call myself like a super employee that sort of branched out and was able to create his own ecosystem. And a lot of that happened because I took a risk, I took a leap. And a lot of times people are not willing to take that leap because it's too scary. Because there's plenty of people that I know that are very well skilled and they're in companies, but they're not as far along as me financially because I just took more risk. Or sometimes I'm just say I just had more balls. Like I was willing to ask for things that most people wouldn't ask for. They understood the value of what they were providing so then I could negotiate. I think that was another thing too. Like I don't like to negotiate, but if the negotiation is worth having, I'll spend the time to make sure I structure a really good deal. And I think that's another thing too. Like when I went to that real estate course years ago, which I eventually did really nothing with, there's a lot of stuff that I learned in these courses and videos that eventually I applied to the business that actually did make me successful or make our business successful. So what is the lessons from this video, or how am I going to like really close this out? The thing is that I started off by talking about a story of my life and kind of the things that I've went through, right? And the things that got me to where I am. And then I'm trying to look back and connect the dots and just kind of see where it is that I am. And I thought that once I got to this point, there would be things that I would do, right? What I mean by that is like, I wanted to build my own products. I wanted to get on social media. I wanted to do something grander. But the problem was I found a way to build a skill, make money, do really well financially, take care of my family behind the scenes. And what happens is the fear set in. I had fear. I had fear of wanting to make a video like this, wanting to build a team to help me put this together because I had the resources, but I was afraid. One of the biggest advantages to having very little is that you have very little, right? As you climb up, what ends up happening to many people, and maybe I'll just speak for myself, you just become very afraid of losing it. And that's what I'm trying to do when I'm making a video like this. I'm just trying to get back to that place where like I'm near desperation, where like I just don't have enough money. I'm unhappy with my job. Like I have 3 kids and I'm just like, what happened to my dreams? Where did they go? That's what I'm thinking, right? And then now I'm thinking like, okay, I'm successful. I made some money, doing well. And now I'm like, why am I unhappy? Why am I afraid to chase my dreams? So you just end up being in the same place. It's like the weirdest thing, It really is one of the weirdest things is you just end up being in the same exact place you started. Maybe you have more money, you have more experience, you have a good relationship, but then you just end up being mentally in the same place. And that's the point of making this content. It's like, I want to keep growing. Actually, I don't want to keep growing. I mean, if I'm being like 100% honest, I don't want to grow because I'm scared, I'm afraid, I hate it, don't like it. But the problem is, if I'm not growing, I am unhappy, right? You see that? It's just sort of like this double-edged sword. Like I'm going to be unhappy because I have to grow. Anyways, that's where I'm going to end it. Let me know if you have any thoughts. Thanks for watching.